Hello, this video focuses on Chapter 4, Exercise 5, and this one's got 3 parts to it, and you're going to end up creating 6 different files in total. To be time efficient, I'm going to be copying and pasting code from a completed version. So let's go ahead and get this all typed in. Let's read the instructions first. It says create a class for Tip Top Bakery named Bread with the data fields for bread type and calories per slice. Alright, so let's start by doing that. So I'm just going to grab that bit of code, create a new Java file here, and paste that in. So we have a class called Bread and then 2 private data types. I'm going to put in my closing curly brace right away. And then I have my next set of instructions here. Include a constructor that takes parameters for each field and includes get and set methods. Includes get methods that return the values of the fields. Also include a public static final string named motto and initialize it to the staff of life. Now I'm actually going to do that first, because that makes sense to include up here. And remember, final indicates that it's a constant. And then it also wants us to create a constructor method so there's our constructor. You can see it's got the same name as the class. We're going to set bread, and we're going to set number of calories. So each one of those is going to be passed in to these locations and then set to the local data type to help instantiate the object. Then we're also going to do gets for each. So one for bread type and 1 per calories per slice. Now you do have to pay attention to the fact that we are not doing set methods here. It just says include get methods, so we're doing exactly what it's asking for. Let's go ahead and compile this and make sure it's okay. Save it as bread Java, and it compiles just fine. Let's move on to the next part. The next part says write an application named testBread to instantiate 3 bread objects with different values, then display all the data, including motto, for each object. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. And here's the code for that. The first part is creating 3 different objects, and notice that each one of these instances is got a different value. So different types of bread, different amount of calories. And then we're just going to do a display. The display is just very simply going to get the bread type and calories per slice, and then also print out the motto. Now the thing that's probably most notable here is, once again, we're passing in an object. So we say display, we pass in the whole object. Remember, it has these values. It also has the motto, which is embedded into it. So when we pass it in, we can generically use that object name here to get the bread type and get the calories and also the motto. Let's go ahead and compile. And you can see it passed, and then let's go ahead and run it, and then let's check the results. So rye bread 120, wheat 95, white 100, and then the motto that goes with each one. So that's a successful completion of the first portion. Now let's take a look at part B, and this one says create a class named sandwich filling, include a field for the filling type such as egg salad and another for the calories. Alright, let's go ahead and do that part first. And I'm going to follow the same approach I did last time. So I'm going to create a new file. Let's get our closing curly brace in there. And I did notice the slash, which I'm getting rid of. So we have a string for filling and an int for calories. it is also asking us constructor that takes parameters for each field and includes get methods. Remember, it does not say set here, just get. That will return the values of those fields. So let's go ahead and add that. Let's first put in the constructor. So you can see it pulls in one for fillings and one for calories, takes those and assigns them to the local data types. And then we're also going to do a get and just gets for each one. So get sandwich filling, which it will return, and then get calories, which it will return. Let's save it. Let's compile it, make sure it's okay, and it is. And that one we can just let sit for now. Then we need to go ahead and do the next step, where we're going to write an application where we're going to test the sandwich filling, and then we're going to create 3 sandwich filling objects with different values, then display all the data for each object. So this is going to be very similar to what we just did, and this one's going to be called test sandwich filling. So let's go ahead and create a new file once again, and here's the code for that one. So you can see in the main method here, we're following the pattern we did in the last exercise, which is to create 3 new objects. So sandwich filling 1, 2, and 3. Each one's going to receive a string and a number, so the filling and the calories. And then we have a little display here, which is just going to basically get the sandwich filling and calories for each one. So we're calling display 3 times, and that's really all there is to it. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's compile. Okay, compiled just fine. Let's run it. And that's exactly what we would expect to get. So that's a successful completion of part B. Let's move on to the last and final one. And let's read the instruction here. It says, create a class named sandwich, include a bread field and a sandwich filling field. So you can see that what we're doing now is we're going to be pulling from these other classes to help create our sandwich. So let's start out the class doing just a little bit that we were instructed to do. So sandwich, so we're going to have bread, and notice the data type now is bread, which is pulling from the other class, and sandwich filling is pulling from the sandwich filling class. Include a constructor that takes parameters for each field needed in the 2 objects and assigns them to each object's constructor. So in other words, keep in mind that the things called bread and sandwich filling each have their own parameters that are sent in. Okay, so this next part, and I'm just going to copy and paste this in and you'll see what I mean. Alright, so they want us to send values to each one of these objects. So you can see instead of creating the object external to this class, in other words in the main body of the program, I can actually do it within this class. So I'm going to create an object called sandwich each time that in and of itself will create a new bread and a new sandwich filling. And see, this is a really good example of how Java works. In other words, we already have a bread construct, we already have a sandwich filling construct, and now we're making a whole sandwich where we're going to combine the filling and the bread. And remember, each one of those has the bread type, the filling type, and calories for each. All right, back to the problem description. Okay, it says write an application named test sandwich to instantiate 3 sandwich objects with different values and display all the data for all of those. Now the one thing that we didn't do here and is important to do, well, aside from the closing curly bracket, is that we also need to do gets for each one of these objects. So one for bread and one for filling. We're going to follow the same pattern that we used in the other two classes. So we're going to do a get for bread, and then notice this time we're not sending in any values because we're basically already sending them in when we're doing the constructor. We're just going to grab the values that we've stored and send them back. And the values that we're storing are objects in and of themselves. They're not like an integer or a string. They are the full-blown version of the object created by the other two classes. All right, saving it. And then compiling to make sure there's no errors and we're fine. And then ultimately we need to also create a test sandwich so that we can make sure everything is working okay. And let's go ahead and start that file. And this is my version of that code. So once again, we are going to create a main method to run everything, obviously. And then we're also going to create a display method, which is going to output all the stuff that we need. And then I'll walk through this as we get there. But let's walk through the top part first. So the top part is creating those three objects, sandwiches. So S1, S2, S3. And then notice that we're passing in values. Like, for example, this one's going to be passed to the bread class to create the bread for the sandwich, and this one's, the other part's going to go to the filling class, which is going to create the filling for the sandwich. But the sandwich is its own object, and it also pulls from those two classes to help make a complete sandwich. So this object is going to be basically extending these other objects. So really what we're looking at here is inheritance. Finally, we're going to take each one of these and display them, and if we look at what display does, it receives a sandwich object. We hard-code a value for slices, because apparently these calorie values are for one slice of bread. Then we're generically taking that object that we send in, assign it to bread B, so that's a data type of B. So we're pulling back the sandwich bread, setting it here. So now this is an object that's taking on all the values of whatever we're passing in. We're doing the same with the sandwich filling. So we're taking it from the object, dropping it into this display method just simply for output. So we're not really creating a new object, we're just using the values of the object, and we're doing it in a generic form because this will accept a generic version of the object. So that's this part of it, assigning it to a data type or object type that will work with it. So that's one for bread, one for sandwich filling. Then we go out and we just do a series of statements. It says the bread type has this many calories per slice, so we get the bread and the calories. Sandwich filling has this many calories. All right, and then we're going to actually combine that all together, and the sandwich with blank slices of bread has so many total calories. All right, let's go ahead and compile, which is going to require that we save, and then let's run it. And let's take a look at the output. So you can see each one of the sandwich types was passed in, the bread, the calories, filling, the calories, and then it does all the math for us. It says egg salad filling is 220 calories, a sandwich with 2 slices of bread has 580, and that's on pumpernickel, and it does the same for each of the 3 sandwich types, and that's the conclusion of the program. So that wraps up exercise 5. It probably seemed like it should be a whole lot more work, but it really isn't that difficult. It's really more the conception of being able to create an object, and then that object being able to create other objects. Right, that wraps this video.